been a minute. It has been a minute. I'm finally back to getting on Ultimate Exorcist Kiyoshi. I'm stoked just from the sheer fact it seems to be picking up a lot of just general attention online. People are starting to actually get on it, start reading it. I'm hoping that me just getting back to this maybe can pull a couple new readers and add some people into the fandom. But obviously, for the people that are, we're almost at chapter 100, which is awesome. And we just finished the entire Demon Realm arc and everything. Obviously, getting that sick. I wish I wasn't busy just so I could have had the review for when we got Kiyoshi's new form. I was so hyped for that. It looks so cool. But we got through all that. Kiyoshi now has made Cross Paladin, and we are now getting the next portion of the story. This is really cool because in the layout of the series, it's like we have, obviously we finished 2 of the Great Demon Lords. Bobo is still alive. I still count Bobo, even, I know, like, Bubs is still up and stuff, and yeah, his son helped him before he died. But I'm still counting Bobo just because we know for a fact that even in his, like, base form, Bobo's stronger, so he should still be counted more so when we're looking at the, kind of like the scope of the verse. And we don't have the last Great Demon Lord still. I personally, just as something to throw in there, I still think that guy's going to be kind of the... It's like you have like we saw the map where it shows the Demon Realm and it's like Roth territory and Bub's territory, but it's still like one of those things where it's like, okay, well, where's the last Demon Lord, Great Demon Lord? So I would assume that like everything outside of those borders, maybe it's like lawless, and maybe that guy's just out there somewhere and he just runs like, chaos pretty much or something, just lets everything go into nature and, just strong eat the weak kind of thing. But as it is, we now are shifting over to more of conflict and stuff with the Exorcist. There's still some stuff in the verse that I would really like to see in terms of like the world building. One thing that I think we should really have, we had Yuta, but I would love to see some more like villain exorcists, just because like we have, for example, obviously there are exorcists that are anti-demon to a degree that they will just indiscriminately kill them, because we know, obviously, if you've made it this far in the series, the demons are kind of like the opposite, where it's like most humans are generally pretty chill. Obviously, it's like not everybody's a nice guy, but it's like not everyone, that you don't got, not everyone's a psycho murderer is going to go around being evil, where it's like the flip opposite for the demons, where most of them are like that, but some of them, like the weaker ones, because they get stuck with like manual labor jobs and stuff just at the ground level. A lot of them just act like normal people, which I think is really cool. I like the kind of flip on it, because it's one of those things where it's like, oh yeah, it's the demons, so it's like they're the opposite, they're gonna be not the opposite of humans, just because that would be kind of like angels and stuff, but you know what I mean, for like, from nature and like the structure of their society and whatnot, it builds that kind of opposition to what everything that they have. So it isn't just, oh yeah, they're where they're at, they're just a bunch of demons running around doing all their thing. They actually have, to a degree, structured society, and it's just run at this kind of flipped style that they have compared to the human realm. But as it is, I would love to see, some people like, kind of like Utsugi, but maybe they have a bad guy group where it's like, oh, well, they just, again, indiscriminately kill any demons, but also any that would be on their side. Because I think that one thing that we're missing, and this is something I think we would have in the verse, I don't think Utsugi's bad. I don't, like, from the standpoint, I don't think he's evil. I think he's one of those guys, kind of like how we had Tsurugi at the start, where he's so set with his job and his ways, he just doesn't care. And it's one of those things where it's like, well, what reason would I have to want to side with what is viewed as the enemy? Because from their standpoint, even the demons that are, quote unquote good on our side are ones that are bound to a human and under their control to a degree, like High Stakes or Jack Joe. It's not the same thing as just like a demon just wandering around and hanging out in their setup, in their organization. The only one that we've seen even close to that would be Shuten, but I don't know if he would really count it. I don't imagine he runs into this dude very often. But as it were, I would say Utsugi's like, he's like right at that spot between, like, obviously, like, he's a bad guy, quote unquote, but he's not evil. I would love to have like an actual like ex-cross paladin that, that defected, and he's one of those ones I don't want to live under I don't want to be kind of like stuck under rules that limit what I can do when it comes to, doing my job. And, somebody who's maybe just takes the rules in their own hand and executes and exercises demons without any form of, anything holding them back. Kind of like when you think about in like Bleach with the like the Soul Reapers and stuff, they still have their rules and structure. And then you have the Quincy's who just indiscriminately kill all the Hollows and the way that they do it is actually bad for balance and stuff, where it's like, well, they're doing stuff that they see as good, but it's helpful in some ways, but it's bad in the others. Like, it's helpful in the short term, but it ends up doing stuff in the long term that is not good for, like, kind of like the normal cycle and flow of the world. So with this right now, we're at least getting into stuff with, again, an enemy exorcist. I would love to see it maybe as like less of a, like, he just decides to do bad stuff. You know, I'm gonna now just fight you guys for some reason. Well, we have the reason, but from the, you know, the standpoint where it's like he's just gonna, like, I don't know, turn and just become an enemy. I don't think so. I would like to see one of those things where it's not as serious directly. Like, maybe he has some form of, like, there's a competition or something where there's gonna be like a battle where it's like not to the death, but it has like lost stakes of some kind, where it's like, oh, if you guys don't do this thing, then Kiyoshi has to resign or something. You know, some one of those kind of things where it's got its own things that, okay, we gotta win, but it's not like if we lose, you know, the characters die and whatnot. You know, everybody's gonna get murdered by some bad guy. But as it were, I thought that I've been rambling a bit just because I've been really excited with this layout, because this is something that I've been wanting to see, is just seeing kind of the side of things. This isn't just like the humans versus the demons, but with an enemy exorcist. Even though that it's an enemy within their same organization, right now he is a threat and he is dangerous, and he's going to be someone that Kiyoshi and them are going to have to figure out what to do with. Because one thing we got in this chapter I really liked is that it said that Utsugi is the most powerful active exorcist. The active is something that I think is really key, because one, we know that there are retired cross paladins, like the headmaster is a retired cross paladin. So there is a layout, obviously, of older cross paladins that are still around, and we know from like Kyoka's and Sakaki, they can step down from their position. It doesn't have to be because they get killed, because that's another person that I think, and I feel like has to be a cross paladin, is Kiyoshi's grandma. At least from like what we've seen, I think personally she is the strongest living exorcist. Like, we have Solomon, he's like seems to be the strongest in history. Kiyoshi is like the strongest potential. Utsugi is the strongest active, and I would assume Kiyoshi's grandma is the strongest living exorcist. I think that just makes sense to me. We've had her hyped up every time we've ever had her on panel or like mentioned, and we don't even see her face. It's just her back, which I feel like if you're just constantly seeing a character like that, it's just, you know, aura and hype moments of the panel. But a lot of the chapter, like I said, we just got stuff like that, like talking about Utsugi, giving some hype for him. I know that there was one thing that was mentioned when he first got name dropped, is that like him and Tsurugi were kind of paired up, and you know, like Tsurugi was called like the sword of the church, and then Utsugi was like the spear. I don't know exactly how accurate that was. I remember some people were talking about it like way back when the chapter came out. We don't know what kind of powers he uses for sure. His aura in this chapter, and then once we see like his hand at one point, it looks like fire of some kind. Like he does like that whole flex, and then just it looks, at least to me, like flame energy, and like the way that like it could just be like the style of his aura, but I think like the weird kind of extra little details kind of from his percept power are supposed to be, again, something that indicates flame. Again, I would just assume that the crests have mostly been elemental, and I would like to see, you know, I think we gotta have a fire person. We have multiple other elementals, but like not like a dedicated fire person. Shuten, but he's kind of more of like, he's like a flame variant character because he has like a special racial fire, whereas Utsugi's is going to be from his crest and all, you know, whatever other stuff he's going to have with him, whatever probably his forbidden relic is, and whatever his trump cards are. We still have stuff with angels, but like, I don't need him to have that. Maybe he is. Maybe he's like contracted with an angel, and that's why he's so crazy. Is it Michael? Is it Michael in mythology, in Christian mythology, that has the flaming sword? I'd have to look into it. If you know in the comments, just tell me. I don't know if anybody's gonna pop in that has, you know, elite knowledge on deep mythology, but anyway, his general presence, I thought was cool. I really like that he kind of just pops up in the middle of stuff. Because, like, the first bit of the chapter, it was just like, you know, they're just talking about him a bit. You know, you have Goro and you see Kyoka and stuff. The one dude, Tenno, Megumi Tenno, I'm very curious about him. He's very strange. Because, like, he seems to me, like, obviously he's powerful. But like he's one of those characters that you would expect to be like if we saw all the cross paladins, I would have expected him to be the first one up just because he seems like the character that's either going to be the strongest or the weakest, and we know that he's not the strongest. There's other than like Utsugi, there doesn't seem to be any like confirmed ranks, but like I would assume he's gonna not be up there. Kyoko was the newest, so it's probably her. But at the same time, I don't know, because this guy with Callum, I'd have to go back and check their skills. I don't think they're as much of a combat unit. I think they were like a support. I'd have to double check. That's something I remember the names, you know, it's Concordia, Callum, and Sanguine, but I don't remember if they had something specific. I think it's mentioned. I'd have to go back and look for some of the chapters. I know that they talk about it. I'm pretty sure it was something like Callum does a lot of more general jobs and does lots of support stuff. I think that would be good. I don't think I think this guy would be pretty good as a support character. Like if his power, like if his base physical strength and how big he is kind of where a lot of his combat skills are from, but a lot of his powers and crest abilities are more based around like support, maybe buffing. I think that'd be really cool. But as it were, like, you know, we got the whole cross paladin ceremony. I thought it was really funny that that Senpei Enma and his son were in the audience, and it's like Kiyoshi slammed this dude after he said that he wasn't fit to be a Grand Cross, and now it's a couple months later and you see this guy becoming a cross paladin, and it's like, good job, nerd. This guy is now ranked above you, and you've been like, he had been in like a first grade, right, for Grand Cross for like 30 years or 40 years. I think that was his rank. Yeah, I'd have to double check because I'm pretty sure that's where he was. He was a oh gosh, yeah, I think it was Grand Cross and then Cross Paladin. I'd have to double check. There's like small things. Obviously, I haven't read those chapters in a minute. But I mean, we're at a point now where it's like I actually might need to go back and look over them. But I do really like that Utsugi just shows up. He just pops up every time. Like before, he just kind of popped in through the window and comes in. Now he just shows up on the desk immediately just to check out Kiyoshi. And it's funny because he has this almost evil kind of like serial killer vibe, but then he's like silly when he's annoyed. And just kind of like flips back to those. And he doesn't like that Kiyoshi smells like a demon. Obviously, after that form he had. The thing about that is like what I would be more confused about is like I wouldn't, if I was him personally, I wouldn't really care if somebody was like acquaintances with like the the demons that aren't dangerous and they just are kind of there. And then it's like, yeah, but he's beating all the ones that are a problem. And it's just like, okay, well, who cares? Like, to me, at least, if I was one of these, if I was him, I would just be like, oh, he's made friends with the locals. Like, it's essentially him, like, being at a petting zoo. And, you know, it's obviously not the case, but, like, for his perspective, that's kind of, like, how I would probably see it, just because he clearly doesn't like demons at a fundamental level. Which is crazy, because, like, at least the ones that, like, directly there interact with high stakes is pretty cool. Also in this panel, I love this panel just because like my main thing for this one, obviously everybody loves these type of moments, but high stakes looks so cool here. He looks so badass. Like just his design I think is one of the best ones in the series because casually he's like not as menacing. He looks cool, but then like every time that he's drawn serious he looks super badass. But you got one of these moments. I know people love these. You know, stuff like Neji during the Chunin exams, with Langris during the Royal Magic Knight exams. People love when you have these moments where it's like some character's about to do something that's too much and everybody steps in. The one to me for sure is the most badass. I mean, like, obviously Kyoko's got her sword out. You got Goro who's just putting his arm on his shoulder. But Sakaki's just standing there. He just puts his arm, puts his hand on his arm. And he's just smoking with his other hand, and it's, oh man, he just looks super badass. I love this stuff. Also, there was the note in there that when you compare Sakaki to Utsugi in terms of raw firepower is higher. Like, he's higher in terms of direct strength, because with Sakaki, obviously he has more versatility because of the different weapons and stuff that he can use. But he's then... This was really cool, because unlike the other ones... Unlike the other two that I mentioned with like Langris and Neji, once they stepped in, it was like, okay, done. They knew that they had to take a moment. Whereas like he was just like, oh, you know what? Okay, and he just starts charging up, ready to go at it. And then Kiyoshi kind of just intervenes and talks about like how he owes his life to a demon, and that's where the chapter kind of ends. And we have Utsugi just have like this kind of dark moment where he's looking a little serious. I'm so intrigued as to where this is gonna go, because it's such a moment of, inner group turmoil. It's like you have this guy who is unwilling, clearly, to associate, I would assume, with demons to any form of free range, even though there's one right behind him. But I mean, like I said, I would assume for him, high stakes is more like a pet or like some form of bound servant, and doesn't see him as like anything else. Whereas Sakaki and him are friends. He clearly they have got a good relationship, but yeah, as this chapter, I thought this was really cool. I feel like everybody loves these moments. I think these are just really cool in relatively every fiction. I think it's just always fun to see. I don't think Kiyoshi necessarily needed help in terms of like he had to have them step in. I think if you had them directly fight, Utsugi should win. Obviously, we're not talking about Ultimate Demon Realm Kiyoshi because that's something that he's probably not going to be able to just drop right now, unless it's something kind of like when Natsu got the Lightning Flame Dragon mode and he can do it again, but it's not nearly as powerful. It's like imprinted onto his body maybe permanently, but like using it, he's not going to be able to reach that level directly. Or maybe it's kind of like how it was when he used it to where instead he's at that level, but it burns through all of his power super fast. And it's not something that he can practically use it, but it's like a trump card that, if he uses, it's like, oh, I have this for 30 seconds, but after those 30 seconds, I'm done and I can't do anything for the rest of the portion unless I get healed or power back. But I'm hyped. We're close to chapter 100. Is this 97? I think this was 97. Yeah, 97. So we got 3 more chapters, and I really hope that, like, right now, I really hope that we sit with this for a minute and just maybe get some exposition. Because if he's the strongest active exorcist, it's not like one of those things where the headmaster is like he's more powerful so he can step in. I would assume, at least off the top of my head, again, if I'm correct, and there is, again, if Kiyoshi's grandma's the strongest living exorcist, she's not active, and she's somebody that could step in and do something, I think that would be like the best time to have her show up. Because it would make perfect sense, too, if it's like one of those things where it's like she's the strongest, but because of her age, she can't fight at the same span of time because obviously she's an older woman. So it'd be one of those things where it's like, in this scenario, she stepped up where Utsugi's like, okay, now I know I'm in a little bit of trouble. I should probably take a minute. Because like, it also, too, I think it'd be really cool as just like a dynamic. Because imagine for him, he runs into the one person that's stronger than him, and it's like, I'm not going to do anything because I got to just wait. I know you don't got a lot of time left, and then I'm unchained. Because I think that would be a really, really cool story and character dynamic if it's like Kiyoshi's grandma just kind of being there is the only thing that keeps Utsugi in check, where he's not just essentially like a rampaging monster who just does whatever he wants. Because it doesn't seem like it seems like he will not break the rules, but he is willing to bend the rules at any point where he deems necessary. Like, you know what I mean? But anyway, other than that, really solid chapter. I really loved it. I mean, I really love most of the chapters of Kiyoshi. It's really hard to not like the style. I know that a lot of people, like I said, are starting to get more in towards the series. I'm pretty happy about that. The sales have been consistent. I'm really hoping that once we maybe get something with like an anime that we can start seeing some rise in that. Obviously, that's dependent also on if they give us a good anime. If they're like, yeah, we're going to do a Kiyoshi anime and it looks like ass and it doesn't do anything for like the popularity of the series, I'd be like, listen, man, you guys should have saw this coming. But as long as they give it something good, I would assume it would give it like a really good boost and like we'd see some progress and some growth. But we'll see. We're at a really good part right now, though. I would assume that if we're going to get an anime announcement, we might, like with realistically this year, we'd probably see it within the next 2 months, 2 or 3 months, just because it's usually around that 100 chapter somewhere mark with a lot of series. So maybe soon we'll find out something about that. But for now, like I said, other than, it's hard to say. I'm trying to say it's like, this chapter is better than, it's like, well, the last handful of chapters, like we had some cool cooldowns, but like before that, like the whole part where Kiyoshi was in that form is some of the most tight parts of the series. It was like, the only thing is like, oh, we only got it for like, a chapter, but that's because Kiyoshi was like super powerful at that point. So until we get to a point where he logically is going to need to have that again, I don't see it just kind of popping up because he's already really powerful. So it's like, if you bring in an opponent where he's going to have that, unless it's literally like, I just want to test this out, I don't imagine that he's gonna need it. Like, if you know, they're not just gonna have a random person show up and Kiyoshi's like, I have to drop this form, unless he's like, oh, hang on, I can do this. I'm not skilled enough at it yet, but I want to get my feet, feet wet in actually having it directly. Again, maybe it's gonna be one of those things where he has it again, but it's not as powerful yet. But I don't know. Either way, leave your comments below and what your thoughts are about this chapter and what your thoughts are about the ongoing aspects of the series, and if you're hoping for that anime announcement soon. But anyway, other than that, I hope you have a good one.